Hello movie barfs and welcome back to the channel. Alright, Kingdom of the Crystal Skull has gotten a lot of hate ever since it came out in 2008. And while I don't hate it as much as some of you folks do, even as an Indy fan, I have to admit it's pretty underwhelming. Some of the facepalm moments are obvious, like the nuke the fridge moment, or Mr. Shia LaBeouf doing his Tarzan impression through the trees, or that final shot of Indy looking out into the distance as a giant spaceship flies off. And not to mention those fake-ass ants, which look like something out of Jumanji. I thought the creepy crawlies for the Indy movies were supposed to be something you could see in real life. Guess something changed, and not for the better. Yeah, all of those are cringeworthy, but the main thing that tanks the movie is that it's just plain boring. Yeah, it's boring. And that's such a crime given that it's Indiana Jones, for crying out loud. I mean, what happened? How did it become such a snooze fest? Well, in one word, stakes. Or rather, the lack of it. Now, I'm not saying that there were no consequences to the Russians getting control of the skull, but what I am saying is that the movie didn't make those stakes clear to us, the audience. And when we feel that there are no stakes involved, we can't get emotionally invested into the plot. Let me give you an example. And what better examples than the previous Indy entries? In Raiders of the Lost Ark, we have that scene at Indy's university where he has that meeting with the two secret agents. Indy's told that Hitler is looking for the Ark of the Covenant, and Marcus Brody beautifully summarizes the stakes of what would happen if Hitler succeeds in getting his hands on it. You know that one line where he goes, "An army which carries the Ark before it is invincible." That says it all. An invincible Nazi army? Bad news! And if that wasn't enough, we saw a sketch earlier where we could see the Ark in action. The stakes are clearly made known to us, and we feel the sense of urgency of Indy's mission. In Temple of Doom, the object of pursuit is the Shankara stone that was stolen from the village. And here, as with Raiders, the stakes are clearly established. According to the villagers' beliefs, ever since the stone was removed, their village has suffered, with their crops and animals dying. But of course, in case any of us shrug it off as just superstition, the film throws in the stakes of the village children being taken as slaves. So you may be doubting the usefulness of the stone, but child slavery, that just seals the deal. So once again, we clearly know what Indy is fighting for. A village losing their source of food? Bad news. Child slavery? Definitely bad news. And in Last Crusade, we have the clearly established stakes of the Nazis getting the Holy Grail and becoming immortal. So as you can see in these three films within the first act, the cards are laid out on the table nice and clear. We are quickly introduced to Indy's goal, his object of pursuit, and what would happen if it fell into the wrong hands. In Crystal Skull, we do have an equivalent establishing scene in the first act, and it's this one here, the one where Indy and Mutt have their sit-down discussion at a diner. But like I mentioned at the start, it's not made clear to us as to what the stakes are. Indy talks about a legend of whoever returns the Crystal Skull will be granted its power. Okay, cool, but what power? And what can they do with it? And to make it worse, it just ends there with Indy casting even more doubt on it by saying it's just a story. I mean, even Indy himself seems uninterested in it. So it's not a long stretch of imagination that we, the audience, don't care to. They did throw some tension in with the idea of Mutt's mother being kidnapped. But then again, we can't connect because we don't even know who she is. We just met Mutt like 5 minutes ago and we have no idea who this mysterious Mary is. It's not like in Last Crusade where it's Indy's father who's gone missing, and Indy is clearly concerned. Here in Crystal Skull, Indy doesn't even know who she is, and just like the story of the skull, he doesn't appear to care either. So when the stakes are unclear to us, the audience, and when the hero himself hardly seems motivated, we lose interest and investment into the story. Mutt's mother got kidnapped? Okay, but who is she exactly? The Russians getting hold of the skull? What's the worst that can happen again? You'll find yourself asking the question, so what, when you think about it? This diner scene was the one that failed the movie. Yet nuking the fridge was atrocious, but the plot could still be redeemed if we knew what we were supposed to care about. But we didn't, and that's why the movie feels boring. And later on in the jungle, when Indy is captured by Spalko, it tries again but fails. The main phrase we get out of that scene is that the skull will grant power over the mind of man. Okay, so do they become telepathic? telepathic or something, it's still fuzzy as to what actually happened. So again, we can't get behind it. And the ending of the movie just confirms the boring buildup at the start and the middle. The so-called treasure is revealed to be just knowledge. What a bummer and what a letdown. Was there even a need to be concerned then? Compared to the idea of an invincible Nazi army or an immortal Nazi army, it just seems harmless. Well, overall, Crystal Skull was Indy's worst outing, and it was just boring because there were no clear stakes for us to get behind. Indy himself doesn't seem to care, and well, why should we? This applies to movies in general too. We as the audience need to be given a reason to be invested. Maybe the film might have done better if they had set up clear and serious consequences as to what the skull can do in the wrong hands. Now we just have to hope that Indy 5 won't be as boring as this. Ending it here, folks. Thanks for stopping by, and see you next time.